What's happening, everybody? My name is Sean Pitcher. I am the host of Your Roots podcast. We are coming at you with episode number 6 with Christina Chu, correct?
That's me.
I always try to make sure I'm saying the right thing at the very end because sometimes I mess people's names up. So I always want to double check.
I think it'd be really hard to mess my name up.
You never know. I've been made
Know.
wrong before. So really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. The great thing about with Christina and kind of having different types of dietitians from different spaces. One of our first dietitians we had on was in Division 1. She kind of has her niche kind of in the football space. Christine is coming with us for multiple different internships. So I have some questions they're going to ask kind of from there, but she's specifically in the private practice. So we're definitely going to dive a little bit more into that. But before we get there, Christina, could you tell everyone who is Christina Chu?
I would love to. So hi, everybody. My name is Christina Chu. I'm a performance dietitian based out of Chicago. I've been here for just over 2 years now. Previously, before that, I was in Boston. That's where I got both my bachelor's and my master's degree, did my dietetic internship, and passed my RD exam just about 2.5 years ago, which is super exciting. A little bit about me. I work, as Sean said, in the private sector, and I focus a lot on combat and weight class athletes. So think of your fighters, your wrestlers, all of those guys and gals are really my cup of tea. More about me. Do you want me to talk about my roots now, Sean, or are we going to
Absolutely. That's one of the things I want to really get from this podcast. And, some people will kind of just give us the rundown of like, oh, I've been to all these schools and done all these things, but this first question is just open to you. Like you can tell us as little or as much as you want. Again, I just want people to get to know each other, especially out in the field, just so you have a better understanding instead of just, oh, I'm an RD or, oh, I just work in private practice.
You're trying to get my security answers, are you? Well, my mother's maiden name is this. The street I grew up on is this. My first pet's name was this. My high school mascot.
It's all right. We'll put the roadblocks up so that doesn't.
Yeah. Feel like you have to answer these or else you're not a good
we
dietitian.
Cannot go on with the podcast. Sorry.
Exactly. Social security, everything. Yeah. So how I became a dietitian, I've always had a love and passion for food. My parents immigrated here from Taiwan. So Taiwan is, if you don't know, it's a small country just outside of China. And it's a very big food country. And I think every country calls themselves, big foodies, but truly is a huge food culture. And, bringing that over to the States and growing up with all those delicious foods and dishes, food was just like a second language. I didn't understand that there were kids who, I remember in high school, like lunch, right? The classic cafeteria like situation of, someone bringing in like a sandwich with just butter and that's it, right? And that was their lunch. And I'm over here like, why aren't they eating anything else? Or, just curious to know about different people's food situation. And I've realized at a young age how much that impacts so much of their life just outside of even that lunchtime too, right? Of, establishing a community, finding some source of joy and culture too. So I've always loved food. I knew I wanted to help people. And I remember, for me, I wanted to go to college and I was like, what do I do with my life? And we're talking to my mom. We were sitting in the car after like tennis practice. She's like, what do you want to study? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, nursing maybe. And she was like, do you want to touch people? I was like, no. And she's like, you're not going to be a nurse then. And I was like, I hate like wounds and like, oh my God, I just can't do it. So she's like, yeah, that's a no for you. She's like, why don't you study nutrition? I was like, you can study nutrition? I had no idea that was a thing. I thought it was just food. Like I didn't know you could make it your whole profession besides like being a chef. So I looked into becoming a dietitian, went to BU, Boston University, because I knew they had a program, a really good one too. And that kind of started my journey professionally. In the sports realm, I actually didn't know that I wanted to do sports until I think grad school. So yes, I knew I wanted to be a dietitian. I thought I wanted to work in the corporate space or outpatient. I still love corporate wellness. Don't get me wrong. It's such a fun group to work with. Plus here in Chicago, the office buildings are literally drop dead gorgeous. But I wanted something more. I wanted a career that would fulfill me a lot more, in that something where nutrition is directly related to the outcome of whoever's job it is. So I remember my boyfriend and then a couple people from school were like, why don't you do sports? And I was like, what could athletes possibly need help with? The classic, like,
The classic
naive.
response. You're just like,
Exactly. Like, they have all the resources. What could they possibly need a dietitian for?
and then you figure out I was really wrong. They need a lot.
So wrong. And I'm glad to admit that now. And I'm, everything happens for a reason, but I'll be happy to say that yes, I did have those misconceptions. I kind of toyed it with the idea, and at the time in grad school, we had to do a practicum, which is basically like a rotation during your school program where you work under a dietitian. I did mine at BU's fueling station, and that fueling station just opened maybe a year or two before I joined. So it was fresh, quite literally fresh. It was a former closet that turned into a fueling station. And I just loved my time there. I mean, it was 6 a.m. wake ups on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or 6 a.m. like you have to be there Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I was like Monday and Wednesday, I was like, I cannot wait to wake up tomorrow and like just be in that environment.
I would say, just to interrupt you there, like it just brings a different energy. Like the coaches, the athletes, like there's just energy, there's this presence that like gravitates you and like makes you want to be around those type of individuals versus
exactly
like long-term care, which we've all had to go through because we've all had to do our internships because it's required. It's like, I remember the first time I had to do that and I was just like, well, whoever the dietitians are who are in this space, love you guys, because I don't think I could ever do that. Like I need to be around individuals that have a work ethic and are excited and want to be here now. Every single athlete wants to be there, every coach wants to be there, but the overall presence of those situations is really like no other in a lot of spaces.
Right. And totally to piggyback off that, then my next naive thought of like every athlete I'm going to work with is going to be super disciplined. And nope. Then I realized that I've had some even like corporate people who are in a different camp than athletes, but who are, I would say, a much better client than a professional athlete that I've worked with, So for me, what I've learned in my practice is that it doesn't matter what their title is, just as long as they truly value you as a practitioner and whatever your role is. Because I've worked with creatives, I've worked with actors, writers, like everyone all over the board. Everyone has specific nutritional needs, and that cannot be just tossed out the window just based on their occupation. Like everybody needs help, whether you're in long-term care or whether you're an athlete or anyone in between. So absolutely, God bless the people who work in long-term care. We love them. But every dietitian has their own kind of niche and role to fill, and that's just not either of ours, and that's totally fine. I know a couple, and they're like, I cannot do what you do. So like we help each other out in that regards.
Exactly. I mean, you got to be passionate about what you do and like what you do, because no one wants to go to work every single day miserable and having a bad time, because you're going to get burnt out quicker, or you're just not going to be in that space much longer. And again, it takes some weaning out, like you said. It takes some time to figure out like what that niche is going to be, and it might be having exposure to several different things, which is a lot of times during our rotations, they expose you to lots of different options that you can go into, for the simple fact that hopefully one of those options hits for you. And that gives you, okay, let's say sports nutrition didn't work for us. Well, we know corporate or clinical, or there's all these other spaces we can essentially go under to do what we want to do at the end of the day and still love what we do.
Exactly. And that segues perfectly into, my time at BU. I was like, this is great. I love this. I love this environment. I want to be involved however I can. That led to me reaching out to Clint from the UFC PI, Clint. Oh my God, I just called him Cliff. Clint Wattenberg.
Well,
that
Cliff
is a
listens to this. He's going to
Cliff.
give you a hard time later on. That's all I'm going to say.
Cliff, like Clifford, the big red dog. Big Red Cornell, it works.
Hey.
I know. Anyways, Clint from the UFC PI, I reached out to him through the CPSDA directory. I was like, who would be the toughest group to work with? Weight class athletes. They're not only athletes, they have to make weight. And me being a total nerd, I'm like, I want like that. Like, I feel like weight class athletes is like TPN. Like it's so complex that I'm here for it.
It's, I mean, yeah, like it's a challenge. So like,
Super challenging.
that's definitely one question I wanted to ask you. You had your internship there. You said, you work with a lot of weight class athletes in your practice. We've seen either amongst us being an athlete or seeing other athletes, that can be a big challenge. And a lot of times it's not always done in the right way, with shifting their way or what they're supposed to eat or how they're supposed to hydrate or the practices in which they do it. So could you kind of expand upon like, what is the right way in weight class sports and how to do it the appropriate way? Or what are some strategies you could essentially implement if you are one of those types of athletes in those sports?
Yeah. So for weight class athletes, and just to preface with all athletes, every athlete is different. We're starting from different places. And so the foundations, the roots, if you will, are what's most important. But overall, for weight class athletes, most weight class athletes are trying to go down in weight. That does not take 2 days. That takes months. That takes years. That takes days. Like that takes time.
It's not a
And
grocery bag and a run on the treadmill.
yeah, well, yeah, there's plenty worse than that, but
I'm sure.
absolutely. Yeah, we don't talk about it. It's a year, I think it was Duncan from the UFC says this, it's a year-round fight camp, and it truly is. And I was actually just talking to one of my weight class athletes right before this, a couple sessions ago, and they were saying how they have a teammate who doesn't understand that and is like, oh, I'm super disciplined. Like I'll run on the treadmill with my garbage bags and I'll, do all these extreme measures. And my athlete is just perfect, like on par, right where they're supposed to be. And I'm like, let's just kind of reflect on that. Like, is that discipline? Is waiting until the last minute, doing something based on ego or just, not really thinking through it, asking for advice or asking for advice and then not following it or just not asking at all? Is that truly what makes an athlete? I don't know. That's a golden question. But if you ask me, I would say no,
Yeah.
right? I think he's going to get burnt out real soon or get injured or um, anything, and his career might end short. So like,
That's the unfortunate thing. A lot of times it's like, you don't want those things to happen, but it's almost like the athlete has to go through one of those situations
oh,
where
absolutely.
something negative happens before like the light bulb goes off and they're like, all right, maybe I should ask questions or listen to somebody, or
Absolutely.
my teammate's working with a sports dietitian that has done this with multiple athletes and had success. Maybe I should have a conversation with him or her.
Right, right, absolutely. And yes, it is my job to help, but there are some people that, stages of change, right? Like aren't even ready. So I cannot help those people, unfortunately. Like they themselves fully need to understand that it is a little vulnerable to be like, this is what I do, and be open to change versus just kind of sticking to your ways or sticking to your coach's ways. That was an eye roll. If anyone can hear an eye roll, that was it.
Just being open-minded, like
Open-minded, like
growth
that
mindset.
is, but wouldn't you say that that is truly where the discipline lies? Like that's scary, like steamrolling through things and just doing what's tough. That's easy at this point. I can ask 10 athletes to eat bricks for breakfast and they'll do it.
Mhm.
But that's truly not like really where the work happens.
But there's a other challenge of it too, is just where they come from, what their environment was, the coaches
Exactly.
they respect and worked with in the past. Like that's all they know. And again, anyone gets a little glimpse of success from that. Even though they might be a genetic specimen as well, like that's just like, well, this is what I'm going to continue to do. And it's hard to get out of those feedback loops or those
Yeah.
continuous loops that you keep going through over and over, because again, the body wants to go back to what's easy and what instead of, you know, they are challenging themselves in a lot of ways, but it's not
Mhm.
challenging themselves in the most efficient way that's going to ultimately get them to the goal that they want to get to.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I've had there was a case where I've had a wrestler who for, brevity reasons tried it my way, the way that we, came up with together, had an awesome weight cut. Then the next week tried it his coach's way, had cramps, lost his match, like wasn't really performing well. And then I asked him, which one did you like better? He goes, absolutely the first way, the way that we did it together. But he needed to do it his coach's way to get their coach's buy-in, because the coaches did not trust what I was doing. They're like, who is this girl giving recommendations? I was a former wrestler, blah, 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 blah. But coaches were saying, hey, you're not sweating enough. Coaches were saying you don't look dehydrated enough, and not giving necessarily proper performance advice.
And
So
that's
I
tough
mean,
too.
yeah,
It's super tough because it's like the coach could be a really good coach, right?
amazing.
It's specifically like what they're trying to educate and teach and provide to the athlete. But it's like, and then it's tough because the athlete's torn, right? Like I had better success with her, but this I do really good with this coach, and I've gotten better in my specific sport. And let's say it's martial arts or wrestling, whatever it is. So it's like, what do I do? Like, am I going to keep going back to the coach and doing what he says? Because I'm like, what's the balancing act that you have to play? And then it's like you got to ask yourself the other question. Well, if this coach keeps telling me to do this, but then I keep losing, it's ultimately not the right result for me. Do I then go find another coach? So it's like there's all these variables that you have to think of, and it's like what's best for me and what's the best situation, and do I not want to burn a bridge? And it could be mentally taxing.
Yeah, and I have developed certainly over my years of practicing that. One, I am not their only nutrition voice. They hear nutrition from literally everybody, their mom, their dad, their teammates friends, like the social media, their coaches, other athletes. Like they hear nutrition through so many other people plus me. It's like everyone, and then there's like one practitioner who they see on like a weekly basis. And because I'm in private practice and consulting, I'm not there every single day on the sidelines, right? So for me, it's like I have to make my message efficient and strategic in that there's no other way. You would be dumb to try and do nutrition any other way.
Exactly. You want to almost work yourself out of a job, or like to the point where like you do so well, like they can't afford not to have you.
And they've seen the effects, they've seen the positives, they've tried the other ways, they've seen the negatives. You choose, right? I'm not going to be like, you have to do it my way. Like that's not me. I think that's really toxic, honestly, and not really conducive to athlete health. But I'm here to kind of push you in the general direction as you would want me to, towards what I know is going to help you the best. And I have all the respect for coaches. Don't get me wrong. They're great. Like I could definitely not be your wrestling coach. I don't think you would want me to be your wrestling coach at all. But like, I really do give props to the wrestling coaches who have reached out to me and were like, I don't know what I'm doing in regards to helping my guys lose weight. And I'm like, well, I do. But I know nothing about skill. Like, don't ask me a single thing about how to do a takedown. Like, but I am super equipped on the weight making side.
That's exactly what you want, though. Like a coach that just admits, is honest. I'm not sure if this is how I used to do it. I know it's really not working. Could you please just help us? Instead of letting the ego take over and just say, well, this is how we do it. I'm going to do it. And this is the only way. It's like, well, no, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. And guess what? There's someone else that could do it better. And it resulted in a better situation for that one individual. But again, some people are just, so in their ways or so in those thought processes. Like it could be very challenging, or may never, again, like you said, the readiness to change, they may never want to change their mindset because of the status that they're at.
And that's not where I belong. Honestly, if you don't want to change, that's fine by me. But like the athletes that I'm going to work with are going to have better nutrition than yours. So we'll see, right? If it's a skill, like I've had plenty of athletes, honestly, it's a skill detriment that they have. And I'm like, I can't help you. We've got your fueling down. It's not an energy thing. It's not an injury. It's not a cramping. It's not hydration. It's not any of that. It's skill. So you know what, coaches, you do you, and that's where you really thrive. But I struggle with the athletes that are like, there are things nutritionally that we can work on. But if you're not ready, you're not ready. And that's fine. Honestly.
Yep. You can only push as much as they want. I'm sure it's the same thing has gone for you. Like I've had athletes that will do stuff in the first week, the first month. It might take athletes 6 months. I've had athletes where it takes them a year, in team settings to even come up and ask me a question. And, it goes back because maybe they just don't trust me, or we don't have a relationship, or the situation may be. But yeah, it's not for us to force be the food police or force stuff down their throats and make them learn and make them want to be better. Like they have to internally want to do that themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those lessons are really important to learn and to learn firsthand. So any failure is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a lesson learned. That's all it is.
Absolutely. So kind of the next thing I was going to ask you, obviously, you being a private practice dietitian, some dietitians might want to go specifically that route, may not be they want to may work with athletes on an individual basis, but they may not want everything that comes with having to be in that team setting and all the responsibilities that could come with that. Can you kind of explain to, possibly dietitians that want to go that route, like how do you even start to become a private practice dietitian?
Oh man.
I know it's a big question. I'm sure it was challenging from the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. So, in part of my journey, I became a dietitian. I passed my board exams in February of 2020. And we know that time as March of 2020, and that's pretty much when the whole world shut down.
Yep.
So here I was, bright-eyed. I was still in Boston at the time. Like, I've got things lined up with corporations. I've got things lined up. I've been talking to some teams. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And then literally never again. But I started my private practice out of necessity. At this time, I was applying for jobs, fellowships, anything, and I still have my Excel sheet of all the places that I've applied to, and it's just N for all the no's that I've gotten or no responses.
The freeze is real.
Yeah, and truly though, right? I was living in the city, no job really. I live with my boyfriend, so he's more advanced in his career. I was like, and he, had to find a new job basically. And we were both like, we can move, like we can move. Nothing is holding us in Boston anymore. So why not? Life is short. Like, why not pick a different place to live? So wherever he looked, I looked. Wherever he looked, I applied for jobs too. Again, no luck. And I just was like, well, looking at my bank statement, I am currently red, so I need to make money. And it happened that way and I think if you ask people who knew me like in college, they'd be like, okay, we're not surprised though. I think it would have ended up this way anyways, but truly in the moment, it was like, I need to like do something with my job and with my career. I've tried applying for office assistant jobs, like outside of RD things, just to make money, and not like literally nothing. No one would hire me, at least. And so,
I remember, I mean, even where I was at prior to this, like hours were cut in half. It's like
mhm.
there goes half your paycheck. I mean, in a lot of situations, people were furloughed or let go. It's like you're just trying to find whatever you can to make sure the bills are getting covered.
Exactly. Like, I don't care if I don't do dietitian things, but like having that feeling of financial insecurity is a great lesson learned, but I don't want to be back there
It's
ever again.
stressful.
It's
Very.
so stressful. Like, my heart goes out to people who have to deal with that every single week, but like for the majority of my career, that's been the fire under my butt is like, well, you've experienced the worst. We don't go there again. Um, so I hate that, it's not like a really fluffy or amazing way that it started, but it kind of happened out of survival. Um, I networked here in Chicago and introduced myself virtually to different performance facilities, physical therapy clinics, gyms, like anywhere I can get my foot in the door. At this time, I was a new dietitian too. Did I let them know that? No, but like I was technically a new dietitian. And yeah, that's kind of how things started. I've
I think the key is there. I mean, just even how you talk on the podcast so far, it's just being confident. Like it doesn't matter if you're in the field for 10 years, or if you're just coming out and you just passed your exam. Like if you go into a lot of situations and jobs confident, like more often than not, you'll probably come out on top just because of your body language, how you presented yourself, and then how you're able to have a conversation or respond to questions. Whereas if you come in, nervous and frantic and like all over the place, like, okay, well, you've been in the field 8 years, but you could barely have a conversation with me. How are you going to have a conversation with this coach or this
mhm.
director of the business or whatever it is? I don't know if we're going to be able to trust you to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. And like two things in that. because I think it's really important, especially for like dietetic students or new dietitians or anyone like who's kind of new in the industry and is like just thinking, oh my gosh, like how do I build my own private practice or what have you? Maybe there's multiple, more than two, but yes, that confidence is key. And that if you yourself is having a conversation with someone who is unconfident and like kind of, meek and portrays themselves that way, then you start to feel that way about them too. And you're like, they could be the greatest person in the world, but how they present themselves is so key in your perception of them. And I'm presenting myself to strangers, so they don't know who I really am. And so I need to like put that all out there. And that's when being like humble kind of does not go your way because they don't know all the amazing things that you've done. Now, do we want to be showcasing that all the time and always talk about yourself? No, but like in those moments, it's like almost like a sales pitch, right? And in that whenever you have a salesperson come up to you, you don't want them to just kind of be really passive. You want them to share all the amazing things about their product. It's just you are the product.
And to play off to that point, I mean, like doing something like this, would have never done this. Started my college and undergrad when I was younger. Like I was very shy, didn't want to talk to people, very introverted. Like I think the big thing that I hope a lot of colleges do, I mean, our when I went to Buffalo State, they exposed us to freshman year one, you had to do a public speaking class. So you got exposed to having to talk in front of people in front of the room. And then several of our classes are 100, 200 level classes. They had multiple assignments where you had to present and speak in front of the room. And we had professors telling us over and over, like in your job, in your career, like you're going to have to talk to people and communicate and have hard conversations. And like, we're trying to prep you from like day one to be able to do that. Because if you're not able to do that, and they were just blunt honest, like you're not going to be able to make it in this field, like to be absolutely honest with you. And I mean, all of our staff that I worked with, at Buffalo State were at Ohio State and Penn State and Cornell and all these kind of higher level universities, and went through extremely rigorous programs. So they understood, and we had the very fortunate opportunity for them to pass a lot of that on to us, in that class I was in.
Yeah, that's a huge area of passion of mine is communication. I actually got my minor in communication and took a public speaking course. My professor, Brian Krogh, like I worked with him afterwards as well too, because I wanted to continue to improve my public speaking skills. And we've worked together, him and I, to, what can I do better in my counseling sessions? Because that's public speaking. You're speaking to someone else. And he actually recommended a book for all my interns. I actually make them read this book. It's called Confessions of a Public Speaker. And it's not a dietitian book by any means. It's a guy who does public speaking for a living, and he walks you through why are people scared of public speaking. He walks you through some of the mistakes that he's made, some of the tips that he has. And this is more so in a lecture setting with like a giant lecture hall, which may not apply in the virtual space of like how do you manage, a small crowd in a big space, stuff like that. But still, it's a great book to read. I'm not a reader, to be completely honest. So if I say it's a good book, like at least I have the attention span for it. But it's truly a great book that I make all my interns read because I think it's so valuable in the dietitian space. And I think that, I like to be completely transparent and open. I think there's a lot of criticism for dietitians. I've heard this from other people who say this about our group of people, in that we don't know how to speak to the athletes because we're so clinical.
Yep.
And like this, who cares what your GPA or who cares where you went to school or what knowledge you have? But if you can't speak to the person in front of you, they do not care. They will not follow your advice.
And guess what? They don't care about the glycolysis cycle.
Is that what the rest of this podcast is going to be? All right, step one.
That's a whole other discussion to have a conversation about. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that as well. I mean, some of the best advice I got, as I was kind of going up through undergrad and graduate school was, especially when I was going to graduate school, like, don't go get your master's degree in nutrition. Like, you're going to learn pretty much everything you're going to need to learn in undergrad, like in sports nutrition, right? Like it comes down to a lot of hands-on experience, because a lot of undergrads don't essentially prepare you for the sports nutrition field. Like there's a lot of improvement that, essentially needs to be done in that area. But their big thing was like, get a master's in business or psychology or communication, like do something that's going to essentially accompany what you did in your undergrad program to make you more valuable when you go out into the field, and to provide you more experience so that you know how to then communicate with probably some of those staff members or people you're gonna have to work with, right? Like when I got done with football in undergrad, I interned with the strength and conditioning coach. And that was kind of like my very beginning when I started before I even got into nutrition. And that's what ended up getting my GA position. So I get my master's paid for, right? Did I expect that to happen? No, but like that gave me a start and a path to kind of go from. But when it comes to now having conversations with strength and conditioning staff or other staff that's within sports medicine, right? Now I can speak the lingo. I love to lift and train, so I could talk to them about training, and it makes those conversations a lot easier, between those certain staff members.
Exactly. Yep. I fully resonate with that.
So kind of go back to the one point you said there. Is there anything else you feel within the field of dietitians or nutrition or sports nutrition? Do you feel there's anything that you think needs to be better for our field to essentially progress and build and move forward in the direction it needs to?
Many things, which this is all a journey, right? Every field is evolving, literally every field. But for me, the biggest thing is communication, right? You're not the only nutrition voice. You're not like a doctor. People are like, okay, I'll do whatever the doctor says. Honestly, no. Even now, they're like, no, I'm just going to Google it and like do whatever WebMD says. So even doctors are struggling with this.
Or TikTok special.
Oh my God, Sean.
I knew that was going to get you.
Blood pressure through the roof.
Right up there.
Literally right up there. Hypertension. No, but like seriously though, like all of these voices, and there's TikTok now has like TV ads for us geriatrics, and they're like, it's like TikTok taught me how to do this, and it's like an ad about how you can learn so many things on TikTok, which I think is great for dietitians to leverage that platform or whatever. But it also really worries me in that TikTok is not like sifting through these, right, and seeing who's like that's not a thing. And so really it's up to the user to be like, that's good or that's not. Especially with our younger athletes, they have no idea, but it's colorful, it's flashy, it's catchy. Like that's the one.
30 seconds. It made me laugh and it was really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Cool transitions. Whoa. Right. And that is unfortunately now the seemingly new standard of education. I think it can be utilized in a great way, but it can also be really dangerous. So this is again the importance of having a strong communication skill, which can be developed throughout time and should be developed throughout time as a dietitian, not just being a good clinician and being able to read labs, but also being able to talk to your group, because they are going to have so many other voices besides yours that may actually have more weight than your dietitian words.
Or we get really frustrated with them not responding or not asking us stuff. And it's like, I've been around enough athletes now. It's like you look at their phone and it's like you scroll through and it's 1,000 different messages on their phone from 1,000 different people. And it's like, you could have definitely messaged them or texted them or FaceTime them, but it's like, hey, I have all these people contacting me, and I just you could have definitely reached out, but I have zero clue. Yep. See, look at
that's literally my phone right now. I'm like,
and we're in the same situation a lot of the times as well, just getting bombarded from all angles from a bunch of different people.
Isn't that crazy? Like, let's just like take a moment to think about that. That would never happen 10, 20 years ago. Like, this is truly like just, it's like an overstimulation of information.
It's not like instant messenger. If anyone knows what that is.
Your AIM. Did you have an AIM or did you have like, what was your?
Oh, it was AOL and then it was AIM.
Yeah. Bing. Yeah. You would set like your little skater boy 426 whatever.
I know we're dating ourselves, but people listening to this are hopefully going to understand what that was.
I hope so. Floppy disks, anybody?
CDs, cassettes.
CDs, yeah.
No, yeah. That's beyond kids nowadays. You say that stuff, or even you try to ask them certain movies and they're like, I don't even know what that even is. Who's Adam Sandler? And you're like, excuse me?
Oh my God, I can't. I'm old.
That's okay. I don't call it old. We're seasoned, wise individuals.
Mm-hmm. We got personality.
That's right. So kind of to finish this up at the end of our podcast here, one of the things I'm starting to ask people, instead of like, oh, what is your favorite book or what is your favorite podcast or whatever it is, what's maybe like 2 to 3 people that you would recommend to the audience that you think you need to follow, you need to listen to them, you need to like shoot them a DM that would provide like just endless amounts of information that could essentially improve or get them better? And it could be just somebody, it could be a mentor, it could be just, there's this person on Instagram I follow all the time. Kind of who are those 2 or 3 people you would tell the audience, like, you need to like get on it and follow them?
Yeah. So if anyone here is interested in weight class athletes, my guys, Alex and Austin from Building a Fighter, I've been on their podcast a couple times. They're a really great resource to follow. They do a lot of strength conditioning rehab for the fighter population, and their podcast is really like practitioner friendly. So it just helps you like gain a wealth of information in that way. So I would definitely say one is Building a Fighter. For like nutrition stuff, recently, I've been following this guy named Adrian Chavez, Dr. Adrian.Chavez, Chavez. Sorry. And I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. But I really like his information. It's just like little nuggets of nutrition information that's really easy to comprehend. So I would say he is someone that I really enjoy following. That's all that comes to mind right now. But again, I can tell you there are plenty of people, but it's again stimulation overload. I'm just not remembering them at this time.
I know we're at the end of the day. It's one of those questions you're like, I'm going to get off the podcast and I'm going to have like 50 that I could rattle off in 2 seconds. And it's like,
exactly.
But
I'm scrolling through my feed though, but I don't see anyone at the top of my feed.
That's why at the end, right, we're going to, put your contact information in the bio, or I know you have Instagram, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you also have a website, which we'll put there as well. So if you want to hit up Christina and ask her anything else besides that, again, I know she's typically a very open person, willing to have a conversation.
Maybe a little too open, Sean. Maybe a little too open.
That's okay. It makes the conversation fun and enjoyable.
It doesn't it? That's what I think too.
No one wants to be a boring Betty out here. Come on now.
Well, there are a few boring Bettys that I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, not us. We're going to keep this like energetic and vibrant and exciting. We're not going to
Exactly.
That's not the podcast we're trying to have here.
Yeah, you want a boring podcast, everyone? The first step to glycolysis is don't ask me, I don't remember.
Yep, don't remember either. But guess what? I know what a carb is, and I know what an example is. Boom, we're good.
We're good. And we know what it does and how it works.
That's all that matters.
Exactly.
But Christina, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on here today. Hopefully, the viewers take a lot of really good nuggets that came across within the podcast. Again, same thing for me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. And I also have a YouTube channel where I'm also starting to put out videos besides the podcast. I'm starting to do some nutrition videos, just basic sports nutrition, anywhere between 3 to 10 minutes. Just trying to get that information out there to people that maybe don't have access to that or don't know, what are just some basic nutrition information that they can use and apply in their everyday lives, whether it's general pop or sports nutrition. So again, Christina, thank you for coming on, and we will see you later.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Sean.